What if I told you that beneath the streets of Los Angeles lies a secret reservoir of oil so vast it could fuel the world's refineries? For almost a century, tens of millions of barrels have slept undisturbed under the city that thrives on its glitz and glamour. But how did an entire oil field vanish from sight? Was it swallowed by a freak geological quake in the 20s? Or was there something more sinister at play? Today, we crack open the case of the underground oil field that nobody talks about. We'll follow abandoned pipelines leading to hidden derricks, decode century-old blueprints, and ask, is this a natural marvel or a man-made conspiracy to hide a fortune in black gold? Stay tuned, because the next drop might bust this dry well of mystery wide open. Grab your hat. This is the scoop you didn't know LA had hiding beneath its glamour. Now let's roll back the clock to 1923. When Los Angeles was a dusty boomtown that smelled of progress and desperate optimism. Out in what locals called the Arroyo Farms, about 20 miles southeast of downtown, rows of avocado and apricot orchards stretched under a golden sky, and farmers still argued over water rights as often as they argued over Sunday potlucks. At the same time, a new wave of oil fever gripped Southern California. Newspapers splashed headlines like Black Gold Bonanza and Texas oil tycoons ILA above the fold, and city slickers dreamed of overnight fortunes in crude. Land agents in pinstripe suits and Panama hats traipsed through orange groves, promising easy riches if only you'd trade your tractor for a drilling rig. Among the early adopters were the McAllister brothers, who swapped their farmhands for derrick crews, and Senora Hernandez, an elderly widow who swore she heard pipes rumble beneath her bedroom floor at midnight. By then, LA's population was exploding with Dust Bowl migrants and war veterans chasing sunshine, and city planners bent pipelines into every new neighborhood. Crude oil wasn't just a commodity. It was the lifeblood powering streetcars, factories, and the burgeoning automobile craze. Yet amidst champagne toasts at Prohibition-era speakeasies and oil-stained work boots, something odd bubbled up where it shouldn't. In late 1924, a trench sliced through a McAllister orchard and blasted crude like a garden hose you forgot to turn off. Engineers scratched their heads. No recorded well sat there. Old blueprints from the Sunset Oil Company hinted at buried pipelines running straight under city streets, but those files were shelved and promptly forgotten when the modern wells sprang to life. Oral rumors swelled with juicy detail. Children claimed to see black slicks glinting in storm drains after rainstorms, and local bikers told of oily patches on back roads that caught moonlight like spilled ink. It was like discovering your grandma had a secret moonshine distillery under the basement, except this basement stretched for miles beneath Sunset Boulevard. Historians now call this the lost oil phenomenon of LA, but back then nobody quite knew what to believe. Was this a freak quirk of geology or a deliberate cover-up by the oil barons? That curious suburban gush set the stage for a mystery more unbelievable than any headline could capture. However, the truth behind this hidden reservoir is stranger than any tale you've heard. Now it's time to plunge into the heart of this century-old enigma, where every clue only deepens the mystery. Our journey begins on a moonless night in early 1925, when Joe Carter, the only night shift derrick hand left on duty, ventured into the orchard behind the main pump house. He never made it back. All that remained was his battered oil lamp, its wick charred to a crisp, lying cold on the damp earth. According to his brother's account, Joe had joked just an hour before that he'd traded his lantern for one of those newfangled flashlights, only to admit moments later that modern gadgets hadn't yet made it to rural L. Let's rewind to that fateful evening, because the silence that followed speaks volumes about what really lurked in those tunnels. Fast forward a week, and a small crew of county inspectors crawled into the old subterranean passageway. They expected a simple clog or an abandoned drift, but what greeted them was far odder. Crude dark symbols scrawled along the earthen walls in thick, oily residue. Some resembled arrowheads pointing deeper into the black, while others looked like alchemical sigils lifting straight from a mad scientist's fever dream. One engineer muttered, "I've seen graffiti on subway cars that looked cleaner." Weeks passed as local academics and self-styled treasure hunters debated whether the markings were Native American petroglyphs repurposed for an illicit oil network or the signature tags of a secretive drilling cartel. Either way, nobody could explain why the symbols directed attention away from the main shaft instead of toward it. Next up, the ghostly echo of phantom trains. Residents living along Sunset Boulevard began reporting bizarre auditory illusions at 2 a.m., deep metallic rumblings, and the faint hiss of steam that vanished before any locomotive could be found. Police even dispatched patrol cars only to stare at empty lanes and oil slicks glistening in the streetlights. One amused officer quipped, "I've chased more real suspects than that phantom engine." Fast forward another month, and railroad historians confirmed no tracks or rail beds existed beneath this part of town. Yet dozens of witnesses insisted they felt the vibrations underfoot and smelled coal smoke hanging heavy in the air. Was this the after effect of decades-old pipeline leaks stirring under pressure, or something engineered to mimic a bygone era's industrial soundscape? Then there are the oral records that refuse to fade. Mrs. Delgado, whose ancestor worked for the original Sunset Oil Company, swore her great-grandfather spoke of midnight meetings held in an old cattle barn. She recounted peeling back a weathered tarp to reveal crude drums stamped with "Property of City of LA Engineering" and notes in spidery handwriting about Project Deep Core. Legend has it they pumped oil straight into secret caches far below Boyle Heights, out of sight and out of mind. Other storytellers whispered of bribes paid to city officials. Rumor has it a mayoral aide once accepted 2 full barrels of black gold in exchange for a sealed public record. Fast forward that tale through Prohibition and 2 world wars, and most documents disappeared, burned in what was politely termed routine archive maintenance. These fragments leave us with more questions than answers. What ties the burnt lamp to the oily cipher on the walls? Why would phantom rails echo in a city built on automobiles? And who was powerful enough to confiscate or destroy every official trace of this pipeline network? Some point to natural causes, fault lines shifting beneath LA reactivating old oil pockets, while others suspect the handiwork of early petroleum barons determined to corner the market by hiding a secret reservoir. You'd think that after 100 years somebody would have drawn a coherent map, but all we have are whispers, stains, and empty archives. What do these clues really point to? Is it simply a forgotten pocket of oil patiently waiting for a modern drilling crew? Or a deliberate cover-up so brazen that no official dared speak its name? Does someone still guard this subterranean fortune, ensuring nobody pokes their shovel too deep? The truth may lie just beyond the next collapsed tunnel entrance, but be warned, some secrets prefer the darkness and might pull you in if you're not careful. All right, dust off your trench coat and grab your magnifying glass because now we're diving into the nitty-gritty of those cryptic clues to separate hard facts from tall tales. First, let's sift through the official archives, those dusty ledgers and yellowing newspapers that stubbornly refuse to tell the whole story. A deep dive into the Los Angeles County Mining Bureau records reveals a puzzling omission. Reports from 1924 mention a subsidence event in the Arroyo Orchards, yet no corresponding permit exists for drilling or pipeline installation in that area. Even the local paper, the Arroyo Sentinel, ran a front-page article about an unnamed oil developer whose identity was redacted after publication. It's almost as if someone used a fat pink marker to scribble out references every time the story got too close to the truth. Those redactions hint at a bureaucratic cover-up, either intentional or the result of routine file maintenance, a euphemism that historians agree is code for "we'll deal with this later," and never did. Next up, expert interviews bring a blend of scientific insight and raised eyebrows. Dr. Evelyn Park, a petroleum geologist from UCLA, examined seismic surveys from the 1930s. Her deadpan assessment? The tremors recorded under the orchard don't match natural fault line activity. They look more like controlled explosions or heavy machinery operating deep beneath the surface. Meanwhile, mining historian Marcus Lee points out that the so-called ghost rails could be explained by compressed air release in abandoned pipelines, creating a sound very much like a steam locomotive whistle. Lee quips, Oil companies didn't want locals snooping around, so they may have installed pressure valves that hiss at odd hours. Practical engineering or psychological warfare, you decide. These expert takes suggest a deliberate manipulation of geology and sound to divert attention from whatever lay hidden underground. Then there are the folk rumors, the colorful heart of any good mystery. Take old-timer Jimmy Caplamp Robinson, who once rigged his own homemade detector in 1952. Legend says his contraption lit up like a Christmas tree when he stood over the Black Tunnel, only for his cap lamp to flicker out seconds later. Jimmy swore that a pair of shadowy figures chased him off the property, though he never showed up to court to testify. Or consider the Midnight Oil Club, a group of thrill-seeking teenagers from the 1970s who reportedly surfaced after trespassing in a collapsed shaft, babbling about endless dripping wells and asking if the oil ever stops. These oral nuggets, passed down with each retelling adding more flair, underscore a truth nobody can fully verify, and that might be exactly the point. So, what do we make of all this? On one hand, the mainstream theory holds that a natural pocket of crude was accidentally tapped, and oil barons quietly plugged one entry point while funneling the resource into a hidden network feeding existing refineries. On the other, conspiracy buffs maintain that a secret consortium of industrialists and city officials hoarded black gold for a rainy day, bribes and vault keys changing hands in backroom speakeasies. Perhaps the real answer lies somewhere in between, a mix of opportunistic drilling, deliberate secrecy, and a healthy dose of rumor-fueled paranoia, ensuring nobody cared to question the status quo too closely. Before we move on, picture this hypothetical scene: a suit-clad executive pressing a button in a windowless office, sending gallons of oil through buried pipes, all while a steam whistle blares at 2 a.m. down the street to keep curious townsfolk at bay. It sounds like something out of a pulp novel, yet each element, redacted records, seismic anomalies, pressure-induced whistles, has a kernel of documented truth. The question is, who pressed that button, and why did they never let anyone find the master valve? As we piece together these fragments, one thing becomes clear: whether it's a natural phenomenon accidentally locked away or a deliberate cover-up orchestrated by shadowy figures, the underbelly of Los Angeles still holds hidden corridors of oil waiting to be rediscovered. But just when you think you've cracked the case, another clue emerges from the darkness, daring you to dig deeper. Stay with me, because in our final module we'll tie these threads together and decide what to believe, or whether the greatest trick of all was making us think we'd ever learn the truth. We travel from a burnt oil lamp in a moonlit orchard to mysterious oil-stained symbols scrawled on the walls of forgotten tunnels. We listen to ghostly train whistles echoing over trackless asphalt and dig through redacted county records thicker than any conspiracy theory handbook. The most compelling conclusion? Somewhere beneath Los Angeles, an unknown deposit of black gold is being quietly mined and moved, part natural, part human engineering, and all of it deliberately covered up. Whether it's geological coincidence or a carefully orchestrated cover-up by early oil tycoons and corrupt officials, the evidence is overwhelming. So which story is true? A reservoir drilled and hidden by accident, or a secret stash of reserves for opportunistic profiteers? The truth may lie in the gray area where human ambition meets the vagaries of the earth. Or perhaps this blurred line was drawn on purpose, to keep snoopers busy chasing rumors while oil slips through hidden valves and forgotten pipes. Maybe one day a modern drilling crew will break through the final seal. Or maybe the main valve is still buried beneath the bustling streets, locked away by those who know. Until that day comes, the underground oil field will remain as Los Angeles' best-kept secret. If you've heard rumors of lost wealth or secret oil reservoirs in your hometown, please share your story in the comments below. If this mystery intrigues you, please like, subscribe for more alternative historical revelations, and share this video with your friends who love to dig for buried truths. Next time, we will uncover the Wandering Carriage organization under the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City. Believe me, you don't want to miss that secret leak.